I think that's one contributing factor. But before, the early, before about 2014, the top 75% of prescription drugs were actually naturally derived or, sort of very similar. Really, it truly inspired by nature. So either plant derived compounds or a compound in the human body. And in 2014, there was a Supreme Court case, this Myriad, where what had also happened at this time. It was the Human Genome Project, right? So all of a sudden, we're unlocking all of these.
That's where we mapped the genome, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So we mapped it in around the late going up to like 2010. And so what happened is you see all these associations between these genetics and companies started patenting genes. And Myriad was the one that patented a diagnostic test for the breast cancer, the BRCA gene. And that was pretty concerning, right? If you can patent a gene, then you could be the only one developing a treatment for it or the only one testing for it. And so in the US, the government was putting together a legislative response to it. They were going to try to make a law because it seemed to be counter to public policy. But lucky for them, because it was not well worded and actually would have stifled innovation, the Supreme Court had a ruling that you couldn't patent a naturally isolated, compound or target. And so that prohibition on gene patenting changed the incentives. And all of a sudden, companies said, wow, that also means we can't get what's called a composition of matter patent on a naturally isolated compound. So lo and behold, they said, we're going to make the most complex synthetic chemistry drugs targeting these new genetic associations. And because of, I'd say, a bolus of science following the Human Genome Project, which we actually now know is genes are less deterministic than we thought, because epigenetics was not known at that time. So we didn't know that the environment can change gene expression. And what also changes gene expression is the microbiome and the immune system, right? The biological feedback loop of the human ecology. And so you had pharma pivoting to really synthetic approaches. They wanted to target, mRNAs. They wanted, specific targets on all these associations. And so really that was the driving factor. And then by focusing on rare diseases, so these are monogenic, where somebody has a horrific outcome from a single mutation. So that's the strongest genetic association. Those are true causal genetic associations. So then they're using these crazy synthetic chemistries, which have crazy side effects, right?
True.
Or gene therapies, right? Which, the early gene therapies, killed someone, and they do have, other serious side effects. So all of a sudden, this opportunity goes where you can go into these patients where you take out that mutation, you can produce a benefit, or which can be then viewed appropriately in the context of the risk of the chemistry that got you there, the biochem that got you there. And because these patients are a very tiny part of an insurer's beneficiary pool, you can charge like $500,000 plus, per year per patient. And so then that set the incentives, and then Wall Street rewarded rare disease companies. And, lo and behold, you have this system where there's no innovation for, the major chronic disorders, and certainly no new truly safe therapeutics. And that was, one of the aspects that we recognize is that safety has become the ultimate ethical arbitrage opportunity in pharmaceutical development.